Welcome everybody to the video. Here I'm going to be looking in a bit more detail at some of the tanker wagons that I uploaded recently, with particular reference to the weathering on these vehicles. So what I want to highlight is some of the points, some of the methods I use to achieve the effect here. And I'm also going to look at some of my other wagons which have been up many times before, just pointing out a few things of what I do with the weathering, and any sort of highlighting any sort of particular aspects that I like to take on board when I'm doing this, if that makes much sense. But anyway, let's start with the TTA wagons. Now, I got these as a job lot. It was a mixed bag of the very first issues of the Tri-ang TTA wagon when it first came out, and they were yellow with, I think, with the logo Shell on, or they were red with Texaco on. Now, I suppose they were all right back in the day, but they looked plasticky, to say the least. Anyway, I managed to pick up these quite cheaply. Some of them are slightly broken, which I managed to fix in some cases. If you look closely at this one, you'll notice that the buffer on the far side is missing. I need to repair that, so that's something which I'll get round to at some point. But perhaps more interestingly, it's the weathering that's on these vehicles, which I'm going to highlight. So as you can see, there's various layering effects here, which I've undertaken. Now, will point out that I used a lot of reference material for these, so whilst my memory's pretty good on the way these things looked, there's nothing that replaces detailed research when you're coming to do something like this. I have to say that I've been to quite a lot of exhibitions and swap meets and things where there's layouts on display, and all very good and everything, but some of the attempts I've seen at weathering, how can I put it, you just say that they leave quite a bit to be desired, because in many instances I've never seen weathering like I've seen on some of the layouts and things on exhibitions and things. But anyway, that's by the by. Now, the first thing to note on this really is that what I've undertaken here is to use weathering powders, and these are great because they do apply, and they do stick to the surface from which they're applied, and they can produce a great effect. What I will say about them though is that if you are handling these quite a lot, and I put myself in that category, then the powders will come off. So they have to be sealed with a varnish spray, and obviously what I've used here is a matte varnish spray. So the first thing that I did was to get all the wagons, and I spray painted them matte black. I then applied the weathering powders, and the ones I used were Humbrol. They come in very small little plastic pots, and there's about 5 or 6 of them of varying degrees of weathering: dirt, black, grey, soot, and various rust colours. And you can just get any old brush, modelling paintbrush, and just apply them, and it goes on. The beauty of it is it's very, very quick. It's about, I would say, almost a quarter of the time to actually apply the weathering compared to, say, trying to paint it on. So, as I say, it's a matte black base coat right across the whole model. Then I applied the transfers. The transfers are from rail tech. You know, there's a vast range that you can choose from, and you can see that they look as if they're being covered over by dirt, weathering and general sort of outdoor usage. Again, you can look at source material to get an idea of how these things look. So I'm going to go through the various wagons and we can have a look and see what's been applied here. So this one, as you can see, there's the spillage coming down the middle from the filler. Now on that one, I've built up a layered effect on it to make it look like it's dried out, it's gone thick, but it hasn't totally dried, and then there's more content spilled out, and it builds up into a layered effect on that one. And what I've used there is basically for this spillage effect and the dripping effect down the sides is the semi-matte, semi-matte paint, or I can't remember what it is. It's not matte. It's like an eggshell sort of finish, and you can see it there. Another thing to point out is that all these vehicles, these were 46-ton TTA vehicles, and they always had roller bearing axles. So I applied yellow paint, as you can see, to the there we go, just there. But it's barely discernible, which is the effect that's intended. The other thing also is you pick out the brake handle, because that's always got to be picked out. And another thing to note is that the buffer shanks are silver. Doesn't matter how much an old wagon, a four-wheel wagon, was heavily used or weathered and you know, covered in detritus, the buffer shanks were nearly always silver because of shunting and movement. So you can see on this one again how the powdered things have built up different layers and shades. One of the great things about them is that they produce a very flat look to the vehicle. It really does look like dirt. And again, you can vary this, and as I say, the beauty of using the weathering powders is it doesn't take long to do, and it means that every vehicle can be slightly different. Now, these very early Tri-ang Hornby oil tankers didn't have the ladder. I think I've got a couple which do have the fitted ladder. They came a bit later. So I've used an etched metal ladder to finish off the vehicle. And here again you can see the spillage on the top, the way it's here, and then it's sort of stopped, and then in the middle it's still where the filler is. It goes further down. That's the word I was looking for. Satin black or semi-matte black. Now I used Humbrol and Revel and Tamiya because, believe it or not, the blacks are different, so you can mix them to create the effect. And as you can see, the shine actually helps with creating that sort of wet look to the otherwise very sort of dusty, dry tank side. And again, you know, you can alter the how much you want to put on, how much of the transfers and the warning information's at the bottom of the tank, how much you want to display, how much you want to cover, and that gives variety to each wagon. They're not all exactly the same. And as you can see on this one, the axle box roller bearings are well, you can see the yellow is quite clear on these. Here's one which has just got a totally nondescript flat look to it. I don't know what colour that is, black, grey. It's just a build-up of just general dirt. Bit of smearing at the end of it there. This one's also got clarity on the maintenance information. Oh, I got it here. You can see. That's it. Yeah. There's another example of one. See the end slightly different on that. There's like a rust appearance on it. You can just see the dirty white brake handle, the silver of the buffer shanks. Very, very finely deep, very fine ladder. And again, if you look at the the examples which you need to see to get an idea of this, so you can see that the ladders are very fine. Again, the axle boxes stand out on that, and the oil spillage has come down in a certain way. Don't ask me how that goes like that, but there it is. So you even get one like that where it's just straight, and again the detail around where the weathering around the axle boxes are, where the brakes are, you get brake dust. And again, the large spillage in the middle of that tank, you can see it's been created the effect of the build-up of all the whatever it's probably crude oil or tar, and you can just see how that layered has built up over time. And again, the transfer is a bit more prominent on that. Effort was made with all these vehicles to keep that information clear to the users of the vehicles and the railway staff, because obviously that was quite important. The 2 stars designate the fact that it's meant to run in trains of can run at speeds. So the 2 stars were saying that they were sort of express. These vehicles, I think, hit the rails in about 1966, might have been 65. Certainly I know they were on the rails in 1966, and they were also some of the longest serving railway vehicles. They were in service certainly in the 80s, and I'm thinking, yes, the early 2000s. Whether they're still used or not, I'm not too sure, because I don't follow the modern railway scene. As I've said before, on the few occasions that my sort of perspective on the railways, as reflected on my model railway, finishes in about 1968. So I don't have really that much interest in what came later. But I think these vehicles were running it well into the 2000s. Yeah, again, there's another one. So each one is different. And the great thing with the weathering powders is you can create so many effects with them. They're unbelievably easy to use, and they're quick. So, as I pointed out before, base coat of matte black, you can paint that on. Because I had all of these to do, I just sprayed them. It was much quicker. And on that one, you can see that I've got the maintenance chart. It's much clearer. Again, that one gives a good idea of the light catching the side of the tank, and you can see the smears and the drips and things coming down on that one. There's another one where it's there's been a lot of spillage on that, or what might be termed recent spillage, and there you can see on the ends of the barrels how the being outside, the weather is taking its toll. So I mean, this is an example of how you can use outdated or older types of rolling stock, what usage you can put it to. I employ quite a lot of old rolling stock on my train formations, and with a little bit of work and a little bit of digging around, you can actually make them look a lot better and bring them up to date. Now, I know that Bachmann have actually produced these wagons, and they're fabulously detailed, and I think that they've done some weathered ones. Without taking anything away, unless someone knows any differently, the weathering tends to be the same on all of the vehicles. But here you can get some old ones and do your own thing. The weathering powders aren't expensive, and they do go a long way. I thought these aren't going to last. But I've still got more than half a pot each after doing these wagons. Then there's the rolling stock that's produced by Accurist models. I'm not sure if I've pronounced that correctly. Well, you know, you look at one of those and you think, do I want to touch this? But, you know, there again. And the other thing I would say is, once they're running in formation, all that fabulous three-dimensional detail, you can't see it. And this is an example of how you can actually put some old stuff to further use. So I'm just going to wind back a bit here so that you can look at these in formation. That looks pretty good. I'm taking it down to sort of track level. Okay. So there you go, folks, with those TTA wagons that I've had up recently. I'll be running them again fairly soon. I haven't figured out what I'm going to run them with, but they're certainly they certainly stand out. They stand out for all the good reasons, but they also stand out for all the wrong reasons. But that was railway vehicles. Now I'm going to have a look at some others. So just move these along into the tunnel. Please don't derail. No, it should be all right. Very quickly, there's a Lima Guards van which I got recently. I've never really sort of come across this before, but it caught my eye, and it's quite a sharply produced model. It's very good. Now, I made some modifications to it. The first thing that wasn't right with it was the fact that it only had one running board, when in fact it should have two-step running boards. Now, it's not quite in the right place, but I managed to stick a bit of plastic along there to give the effect of two running boards on that. Of course, the other thing you have to do is to put these handles on. And it was also a very, very dark, shiny brown. So I painted it bauxite brown, which is the official freight colour. And on the roof, I filed down the little pimples that Lima always had on their rolling stock roofs, and put the more prominent, their white metal detailed torpedo vents. Also painted the veranda a different colour, just gives it a bit of contrast. The overhead electrification signs, some transfers, and as I say, Bob's your uncle, that's that vehicle upgraded. So let me move these. Along. Right. Now, when it comes to weathering the routine vehicles, the wooden based, the planked wagons, I take a slightly different view of the weathering, because the only thing that I really actually go for is the chassis. Now, the chassis on all these vehicles, when they come out the box, are bright, shiny black, and you just don't see any detail. Now, what I've used here is basically to paint the weathering on, and that consists of brake dust, dirty black, and frame dirt. And you just blend them together as you're painting. So you just dip your brush in, paint it on while it's still wet. Go to the next pot, whatever colour it is, and then apply it and spread it in and mix it, and it just blends. So have a look at that. You can see how the brake dust is accumulated on the brake side of the vehicle. I've done a bit of dabbing of weathering onto the sides, but generally I don't do that. So what I want to point out with these wagons is that almost half the traditional wagons in the steam age era were open wagons of one kind or another. 5 plank, 7 plank, 8 plank, 3 plank, 1 plank, so on and so forth. And the worst thing about them is that on many layouts they just run empty, and you need to do something about that. And I've always tried to do that. And am I going to have to finish this here?